Today on DOOP by the River, we're going to look at Brenden Aaronson. Our youngster is now off to the Premier League. We're going to discuss that sale. Of course, our Philadelphia had a late one on Sunday night. What a victory. Finally a win, right, against the Portland Timbers. We'll talk about that. And, of course, we're going to look ahead at this upcoming Saturday, Memorial Day weekend, the Philadelphians traveling up to New England to face off against the Revolution. And you do not want to go anywhere because you do not want to miss this episode of DOOP by the River. Let's get it started, guys. Done it!
DOOP by the River
doesn't do anything well. There is not one.
I'm sorry. There was no creativity.
As a Union fan, I take that all day.
Another DP. We need to go get Mario Balotelli. And that is right. Welcome, everyone, to DOOP by the River, the show where we follow everything Philadelphia Union. And, of course, we are brought to you by Philly Sports Network. Before we dive into today's episode of DOOP by the River, ladies and gentlemen, real quick, if you are watching, thank you so much. If you're watching live on YouTube, make sure you guys hit that like button and subscribe for more. We really appreciate if you guys can join on in the family. And, of course, you guys can find us wherever you stream podcast. You can look us up under DOOP by the River, and you can find us where stream podcast. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we got a jam-packed episode here today. Obviously, we're looking back at Sunday night's game against Portland. We're going to look ahead against New England Revolution. Of course, to join me with all that, I got my man. It's Justin, Hungarian bicycle enthusiast Friedberg. Justin, what's going on, brother? How you feeling, man?
Pretty good. It was a late one Sunday night. I made the mistake of staying up for the game. I'm glad I did. We have a lot to talk about, off the field, and we get to preview a matchup against lovely Brucey and Mr. Kraft.
Absolutely, man. It should be a lot of fun. I can't wait to talk about that one. As these two teams have definitely grown to hate each other a little bit, Justin. So I can't wait to talk about all of that. But Justin, we got to talk about the business at hand. And we're talking big business here, all right? We're talking Brenden Aaronson getting sold to the biggest league in the world. He's headed off to the Premier League as he's been sold off to Leeds United, and this has obviously been no secret. We have heard Brenden being linked for about a year now, and it's been official. On the day we faced off against Portland, Justin, from what I saw, 29.5 million. I saw 30 million as well. Being sent over to RB Salzburg for the services of Brenden Aaronson. So that means, Justin, we get about 5 million of that bad boy coming back to Philadelphia. Thank you, Warren Sander, for some great business here. But, Justin, you're obviously more in tune with the Premier League than I am. So, first, obviously, I want to get your thoughts on this move because, obviously, we're both really big Union fans, and this is obviously a big deal for both of us. But how do you think he fits with this Leeds United team, man?
So this move was teased around December. Obviously, the reason that was given at the time was, well, Salzburg are in Champions League. They were prepping for the knockout round against Bayern Munich, and what they didn't say, but everyone kind of read between the lines was, well, Leeds were obviously going with relegation. They were flirting with it. They were in the relegation scrap for most of the season, and this deal was obviously going to be contingent because if they got relegated, Brenden wasn't going to the championship. There would have been another Premier League club or even a Serie A club. I remember at one point AC Milan was linked, and so 30 million, 5 million to the Union is a pretty good chunk of change. That this is the deal that keeps on giving for the Union, that sell-on clause. And even if it wasn't, with these days with solidarity payments for, that now that the US and MLS are doing solidarity payments, you're going to see a lot more money coming in, but that money will get reinvested back to the academy. Although if it were me, they'd be, I'd say, hey, Jay, go invest that money in paving your lots or putting it in standing. But hey, what? I can't control what Jay does with money. But seriously, Jay, please pave those lots. They are crap. But no, This is a great move. I think, especially given the fact that he's back with Jesse Marsh. Like, if you look at Marsh's time with Salzburg, he had no problem sticking Brendan right in there, right into the position that he flourishes, which is that left side of the midfield, the attacking midfield, kind of as a central like slash winger. It depended on how they lined up. It was kind of that 4-2-2-2, so he was kind of usually behind the two strikers if needed. But Marsh, Marsh plays the similarly pressing system that Red Bull does, that the Union have, and I think he's going to slot in perfectly. The biggest change between Marsh and Bielsa was you still had some sense of pressing, but you didn't have the tired legs. Bielsa's a good coach and all, but the thing that everyone says, and it's the same thing with an Almeida, the same thing with Hernan Losada, all these kind of disciples, are that these players run out of steam. I mean, especially with Leeds this season, they had a ton of injuries. Calvin Phillips and Patrick Bamford both missed huge chunks of the season. And I would argue that both of the guys, especially Patrick Bamford, is key to their success in the first season. And you saw that. I mean, Marsh, when Bielsa was fired and Marsh was brought in, they were kind of teetering on the edge of will they, won't they? And as the season went on, the numbers show that with Marsh in place, if he had been in place at the beginning of the season, they actually would have finished at least a few places higher. So, and the biggest thing is, one, it gives legitimacy to American coaches, because obviously the British media, no secret, the British media has kind of a bias against American coaches. We saw it with Bob Bradley in his very, very, very short stint at Swansea. And I think now that Jesse Marsh has gotten a foothold, he'll get another year. He's going to get a transfer window, so he's already brought in Brendan. So I kind of feel like that's going to squash the Geordie to Leeds rumors, although who knows? That move could still go on. I mean, I think you kind of have two players of similar positions, so I think that's a bit of a tough one. But I think he's going to slot in perfectly in the heart of that midfield. To have a player, to play with a player of Rafinha's ilk, of Calvin Phillips, and if Patrick Bamford can get healthy, I know Brendan can provide that service to a guy of Bamford's quality. So the only concern I have is we know how physical the Premier League can be. We know Brendan can take it, but we also know that the amount of the physical toll that league can take on players. And for someone who's played, in some of the toughest places, who's played, CONCACAF qualifiers, who repeatedly got thrashed around in MLS games, I know he can handle it, but it's just, that's my concern. But I think he easily slots in perfectly to the heart of that Leeds midfield.
Listen, they build him differently in Medford. All right, he's gonna be high now. But listen, I think what you didn't hit on, like everything you said, is spot on. But I think when we look at our club, what this does to the legitimacy of what they've been building with the youth academy, I think it escalates that. I mean, trying to sell to these kids here in South Jersey or Montgomery County or Delaware County or in any part of Philadelphia. You have an academy here that produced Brendan Aronson, who's about to go play every weekend at the Premier League, the pinnacle of the sport, the biggest league in the sport. And I think that really brings a lot to it. Of course, obviously Justin made the joke of spending a little bit of the money on the pavement out in the lots, but how will we spend this extra $5 million that we just earn off of another sale from a player that doesn't play for us anymore? So I think that also adds to the legitimacy of Ernst Tanner. And in the words of Kevin Kincaid, Ernst Tanner is the best executive in the city of Philadelphia, and you can put a stamp on that, ladies and gentlemen. But Justin, as well, Jack DeVries staying in Venezia, obviously the delegate, it possibly gives him more playing time next season, but he's going to be staying over in Italy.
Yeah, that one, I think it's a shame that his move over there kind of coincided, obviously, a few years into the Union kind of switching out of a system with wingers, and now could he possibly have competed for that third or fourth forward spot and kind of been a second forward, possibly? But I think we don't know. Like I say, you wonder if that would have been like a David Accam situation, or a Fafa, where you're kind of pigeonholing a player that's a winger slash forward into a more central role. It's a shame. I think he could be a quality player, but listen. I mean, he scored 20 some goals in the U19s, coming back from injury. I think that's key, and I'm sure there's a sell-on clause there somewhere. I'm sure they'll get a nice fee from Venezia. I think it's a good bit of business. You're not, again, we talk about this. These are the moves that are kind of going to be commonplace for every Brendan or Mark. There's going to be a Jack. There's going to be a Jack DeVries. There's going to be a Thomas Romero. There's going to be a Derek Jones, an Austin Trott. Like, there's going to be the moves that kind of fly more under the radar, and that's normal. I think if you're going to get more of those than you are the Brendans or the Marks, and I'm okay with that because that means that you are churning out consistent talent that is going to play somewhere good. I mean, look at some of these guys. Austin Trusty just got sold. Getting sold to Arsenal. Thomas Romero at one point was the starting goalkeeper for LAFC. Derek Jones is now a key piece on the bench for Charlotte. Like, it's not like these players aren't moving on and getting somewhere else. It's just they weren't going to get time here, and that's fine. It's kind of how the numbers work out. Not everyone's going to get time. So if we can get a bit of money for a player, then that's good business.
I want to be the Alabama or the Ajax of MLS. All right, I want people to say I want a Valencia over in Spain. Be like, we need a young stud player. Where do we go? Philadelphia. Here we go. Boop, and we'll hopefully we can trend in that trajectory as well, man. But
I think we are. I mean, I think you look at U2 being the place where Carlos Paternina, Jose Riasco, Chris, a lot of these young players, Barbacar Diallo, these young players that maybe if they had stayed where they were, may not have the same trajectory. But this league and even this team are giving players, saying, hey, at the very least, we can give you a move somewhere. It might not be your ideal move, but it's a move to another professional club. And the track record for this team shows that, regardless of, it might not be a Salzburg, it might not be a Genk, it might be a US, it might be a Hartford Athletic or a Phoenix Rising. Either way, you're still in a professional player. So I think the trend is showing for MLS, and especially for the Union. When we've heard it from our good friend and fellow PSN contributor Steve, who has some friends over in the youth systems in England, and said the Union's name are coming up in terms of being a widely respected academy and pipeline for talent. And some of these players, might come over and say, you know what, I might not have the ability to break through this team, but if I go to the Union and I work hard for 5 years or so, I think I can be a player that comes back to Europe, or I can make that next big move to another team. I think that's what you're seeing, and that's at the end of the day, that's really all you want to ask from this team is, can we be the launching pad for players' development? I think that's, at the end of the day, that's what we've been talking about for years, and we're finally starting to see it.
Absolutely. Want to give a shout out to Mike in our comment section.
Oh
Mike
my
Thomas
God,
checking in
Mike!
again.
You know,
Not a fan of Alabama, so Alabama question mark
yeah.
gross.
Wait. When are we doing the NILs? When we're getting licensing licensing deal? What? Listen, Union. What deal am I getting for my likeness for my image rights?
I'll take a kit. I'll take a kit. I know Justin would as well to add on to his collection.
You kidding me? Listen, I'll take a kit. Absolutely.
Roll Delaware River Tide roll. That's a great movie. We love you, Mike.
I think that has a different meaning. Delaware River might not be the cleanest.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. All right. Well, Justin, let's get to the action on the pitch because our boys on Sunday night went over to Portland and got themselves 3 points as they take a 2-0 victory over Portland, a much needed victory for the Philadelphia Union. And when you look at the lineups, the same suspects, Andre in goal, Wagner, Ellie, Glezes, Harry, your back line, your midfield, Aflak, Martinez, Bedoya, and Gazak at the tip of the diamond, and your forwards, Santos with Carranza. And Justin, this is a game where I saw the Union start fast, but we've seen that before, right? But they were relentless through the 90 minutes. There was a spurt in the second half where I felt they had a little bit of a lull, but they pounced back right back. And when you get a goal in the 5th minute in this match by a great bicycle kick, and by the way, off of a long throw-in as well, and Daniel Gazak hits a beautiful bicycle kick to get an early 1-0 lead over the Portland Timbers and to shock Providence Park, which had a solid crowd as well. You get, and anytime Justin piss off the Timber man, that's always a great thought as well. But the Union were again relentless through the first half, countless chance after countless chance. Set pieces were a story as well. And in the second half, the Union started off that second half similarly how they started off the first half. Kai Wagner gets a great cross in, and Sergio Santos finally using the body, using that head, and getting a great header in and getting the 2-0 lead for the Philadelphia Union. We had the Alan Chapman show for about 20, 30 minutes. He wanted to show face. He wanted to say, hey, listen, I am the star player here, okay? He's threatening Alejandro Bedoya with cards. He's giving cards to Julian Carranza for walking off slowly. We see this every single match, Mr. Alan Chapman, but hold on, we'll get to that in a second because I can't wait to get to Justin's thoughts about that. But, Justin, after 90 minutes, the Philadelphia Union walk off with a 2-0 win. Dude, I felt relieved. I knew that Union Nation were all upset because, look, we get it. We're still in first place, but no one wants to draw 5 straight times. No one wants to do that, and I completely get it. But this was a great one. The fact that you got a 2-0, the fact that you played a full 90, and the fact that you beat the Portland Timbers in Soccer City, USA. Come on now. Justin, how are you feeling after that Sunday night win?
Pretty damn good. As I said, I made the mistake. I had a D&D with my fellow Sons of Ben members, our SOB D&D session. And I'm like, you know what? It's 10:30. I'll stay up for the first half at the very least. I have a few drinks. So I'm like, I'll set aside a few for drinks and just kind of watch the first half. And I'm sitting there and going, I'm like, okay, well, I'm still talking with some of the guys in the session, and I look over and I'm like, and I process of that long throw, and I'm like, oh, okay, and I was like, Ali flicks it on, and then guys like again with an awkward looking overhead / bicycle kick, whatever you want to call it. I'm going for the bicycle kick. I think at that point, if you're overhead kick or whatever, that's a bicycle kick. Listen, it's over your head. It is what it is, but that shocker 5 minutes in, stunning the Providence Park crowd, just amazing. And listen, anytime you can shut up Timber Joey, I have no problem with that because that shtick gets old after a little while.
Dude, he's even getting sponsored. Talk about NL deals. He's got the whole big old TikTok on his t-shirt.
Oh yeah. Listen, at this point he's more a part of the brand than anything. But unlike past games, you saw the Union not let up. Portland in the first half really did not challenge Andre. The Union defense played well, and anytime, listen, for all the Portland's done well the past decade, it's kind of a transition period. Diego Valeri, he went back to Argentina, to his home, boyhood club.
Argentina.
You still have Sebastian Blanco, but he's coming off a pretty big injury last year. Managed to play in the MLS Cup final, but they basically kind of go through him. And I mean, they know Felipe Mora. He's still coming back from injury. You got rid of Jeremy Abobasi last year. Niezgoda is, when healthy, is a decent option, but it just felt like the Union absolutely suffocated any Portland attack. I mean, every time I thought the Portland counterattack was going to happen, the Union snuffed it out and then had a counterattack of their own. I mean, there were a number of chances. My favorite was the Union draw a foul about 25, 30 yards out. Kai lines up for it, and in a bit of smart play, plays it low into Ali, who, yes, Mike, I think we need the foot statue.
You have to do it with your feet, though. You got to do a round of applause with your feet.
But
Soccer.
it was a great play to Ali, who turned, and now I think he could have fired it far side to generate a better rebound, but you still force Ivacic into a good save, and that was kind of like they were getting great plays off the long throws. They were getting pressure. It was relentless in the first half. In the second half, you're going, okay, come on, we got to keep this going. We got to get another goal, because the one goal has always kind of been biting us in the ass. And the Sergio goal kind of comes out of appear to be nothing. I mean, Nate fizzles in a low cross, just barely missing everyone at the near post. Jack Elliott hunts that down, swings it back to Kai. Kai, again, the best left foot in the league, one of the best crossers in the league.
Don't let LAFC fans hear that.
I don't understand how Sergio was so wide open. Like, the amount of space, and looking back at that play, Bill Tuiloma was supposed to be covering Sergio, and he just kind of loses him. Like, Sergio just kind of takes a step back to kind of get just enough space to head that, and that was a perfect header. And after that, Sergio subs off, and Paxton Aronson, my lord, man, as I've called him, the little engine that could, that chihuahua that nipping at the heels of the Portland players. He was driving the Portland midfield and defense crazy with all the pressure that he had. And honestly, it really took them till, I say that goal in quotations, because upon further review, it came back for offside. Portland fans on Twitter were like, "Oh, did he really touch it?" Listen, if the amount of time that Chapman spent looking at that, is it like if that was the call of, hey, you should look at this, and he spends that long looking at it, it's not going to be for nothing. And so they calls it back, and then they force Andre into two saves. Both of them were pretty good chances. The Tuiloma chance was actually, I think, the better of the two chances. But at the end of the day, those were really the only two saves that Andre really had to make. And you walk again. This Union team, for all you can talk about the Open Cup, blah 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 blah. This Union team this season feels different. This is now a second first. First time you went into Yankee Stadium and won a game, and first time you've walked into Providence Park, a absolute fortress of soccer, and pulled out a victory. I don't think you can really complain. Now, to a certain aspect, I can complain, because it's when you look at it, I just want to talk about the whole thing with Carranza walking off the field, and I did not even realize he was potentially in the for yellow card accumulation suspension. I don't know what
Jim Curtin's bite as well.
Well, I don't know what Carranza could have possibly said to earn it. He was right near the edge of the field. It definitely wasn't for time wasting. It could have been for dissent, but even Jim said like there was no need for that card. He was already almost off the field. I don't know that
because you guys don't know how to manage a game. He gets suspended.
Yeah, well, yeah. Like at this point, like with if the Union didn't have bad luck with refs, they'd have no luck at this point.
Do you think we get a third apology letter, by the way, from the MLS?
No, listen, I'm surprised we've even gotten two. Like the fact that the MLS and Pro would even admit that they've done anything wrong is more than I've ever seen before.
Next time I go to the front office, I'm gonna see if they actually like hang like Christmas card mom would hang them up on the shoestring and then in the kitchen. It's like, I hope the Union do that in the front office. Like, is this an apology letter from the MLS? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Listen, I would love it. Here's the first apology letter to which Darn Garber kissed our butts. Here's the second one. And if you look over here,
oh my God. We got to frame all of them at this point. But you really brought up some good points. Justin, to me, this was an absolute defensive masterclass by the Philadelphia Union. And they again show you that there's been a lot of talks about this system. Does it work? Does it not work? Is it sustained for success? Obviously, we need that MLS Cup to answer that question. But, dude, even to this day, we've ran the same system for essentially 3 seasons now. We're in our 4th season because if you take back 2019, and yet this is still it's getting better. It's getting more installable. You just mentioned all the first in Yankee Stadium, the first in Providence Park, and the way they kind of shut down, and it was a complete team effort. Yes, the back line was on freaking point, but the way the midfield was so compact and just freaking suffocating the crap out of the Portland Timbers, it was masterclass as well. Justin, it took the Timbers 27 minutes just for them to get a shot. Their first shot attempt in the 86th minute. That is bonkers, Justin. Absolute bonkers. And obviously we know that the counterattack and how we love to maneuver and attack that way. But man, oh man, like they could shut down attacks like that. And I know they were missing some key pieces. Although you were saying Nisgoda, I think he's solid, but I also do like Focasa, that was he Portuguese? I thought he's pretty solid forward as well. But I just that's just kind of my biggest takeaway. The fact that you even need to rely on Andre Blake until the end of this match, it is truly remarkable. But Justin, obviously there is still going to be those questions about the attack. What did you feel about it overall? Obviously, you did not have Ua, and you saw Carranza run for about 81 minutes.
I thought the attack looked really good. I think it's the best we've seen probably since the LAFC game. And the thing is, it's the attack can go as much as when Daniel Gazdag has some solid help. And by the way, Daniel Gazdag, if he is not in the MVP conversation at this point, the first half of the season, 7 goals and 3 assists in 13 games. I'm sorry, but at this point, he's got to be up there for one of the best attacking midfielders right now in the league. And you can't, the numbers are showing it now. Like you can't say, oh, well, we need to see more. No, 7 goals and 3 assists in 13 games is a absolutely monstrous return.
Justin, I have to ask for all the Sixer Union fans, who actually votes for the MVP in the MLS?
The media.
Oh boy, here we go.
Yeah. No, trust me, it's one of those kind of votes. But I think this time around, I mean, you know what you get from Carranza. It's a shame. I mean, listen, one game. I think having it right before the break is not a bad thing. I think essentially giving Carranza a little extra rest. It's never a bad thing to give a player some rest. It'll make some lineup choices, but the attack looked really good, especially when Paxton came on the field. Paxton really, they had some solid chances in the second half, even after the goal. and they were playing exactly how the Union want to play. They had just under 40% possession, I think. The passing numbers were better. This is Union soccer. This is exactly what Jim wants to play, and they executed it so perfectly that the Union playing this well makes other teams look poor, just because, again, we've said this, and I've gone back to, when we interviewed Danny, and he said the Union aren't a defensive team, but they have a defensive structure to where if they're on their game, they're suffocating you. To have a goalie like Andre Blake at this point only having to make 2 big saves, that's a luxury you love to have, because if you need him, he can come up with that big save. But you didn't need him to make a big save for over 80 minutes. And I think that is a luxury that any team would kill to have, to say, hey, my goalie only needs to make a couple big saves over 90 minutes, and the defense and the midfield take care of the rest of the cleanup. Any coach who tells you that they wouldn't want that at a performance, they're absolutely lying to you. This is, without a doubt, the best Union performance, I think, to this point in the season. I think this is one of the most complete games outside of the NYCFC game. This is one of the most complete performances you've seen from the Union all season.
Yeah, it's definitely tough to kind of match those two up together, but it is definitely up there for one of the best. Mike lets us know that the players actually do get votes as well, so it'll be very interesting. Obviously, Gazek's gonna have to continue this form.
I thought the media vote was like slightly higher, but I don't know.
But players should still vote. I think.
I think that's. But
unlike the NBA,
you know how it works with those things. It's usually like the supporter shield player, like team, like. Remember, like last year it was, Carlos Heel wins the MVP, Bruce Arena won the Coach of the Year, like the awards that were voted on, like Matt Turner, like you knew who was winning what at certain points of in that season.
Absolutely. I do want to ask you a question, because I saw this statement a couple times, and I actually had this on my comments on TikTok as well. I want you to look kind of a little bit ahead at the end of the careers of Paxton Aronson and Brendan Aronson. Who do you think will have the more successful career overall? We're talking trophies, we're talking overall performance on the pitch, everything.
I know it sounds crazy at this point, but I think Paxton. And the reason I say that is I think with Brendan, you know what you get in terms of they both have the energy, they both have the pace. I think the thing that might set Paxton apart is his ability to get shots off, the ability to get in those spaces. And Brendan's a better passer. I think that's the thing. It's just, for me, the unknown of the shooting is what is just leaning me towards Paxton. I mean, Brendan, as Mike said, he's 90% there. We know what we've got. He's making the big money move. But I'm still always curious with Paxton, just because I feel like there's going to be a point where he just takes it and runs. And I think it's going to be tough, obviously, with Gazdag playing the way he is. But I think he's going to be pushing for minutes. He could be pushing for minutes. At this point, Jim might throw him, if he wants to give Uwa a rest, or throw him in as a second forward, or do the Christmas tree. Like, I think you're going to see him force his way in here. So it's a close call, and I know, listen, I might get flack for it, but I think at the end of the day, Paxton has the chance to be have the higher upside of the two.
It's very interesting, because obviously Mike as well says Brendan's proven already. Paxton is pure speculation, still has not separated himself at all. Here's what I will say about Paxton. When I watch him play, he's not scared. He's not, and I'm not saying Brendan is either, but when I watch Paxton play, I see him take more risks. Like the fact that Paxton wanted to take on Diego Chata in this past match, like an 18-year-old kid wants to take on the best.
That takes balls of steel.
Exactly.
that takes massive cojones to pick up with one of the scariest men in the league.
Dude, seriously. And so that's where I'm like kind of lying on. And so here's the thing as well is obviously soccer has its ebb and flows, comes systems. Obviously, I think Brendan's style of play fits today's day and age of soccer. Everyone's looking for that, Jurgen Klopp high press type of style. And he obviously fits that mold very, very well. And so I think that, depending on how the game changes over time, I think Brendan is just more suited for the way you play now. But it is definitely going to be interesting, and we'll obviously be looking to see. But, I think right now I have to go with Brendan. This is classic Union fans always hoping the next guy is better. 90% of the time that guy doesn't pay. That's a good point as well. It's tough, especially Brendan set the bar really high right now as far as Union youth products as well.
But I think that's the luxury that you have with these academy players with the hype. I mean, Paxton has shown with obviously he hasn't had as much time, but when the moments he's been given, he's come up with some pretty spectacular moments. And I think in Brendan's case, he also benefited from not really having much of a competition in front of him. With I love Marco Fabian, and his goal against Red Bull will forever be one of the best moments for me in Union history.
Weirdest career in Union history too.
But let's be honest, Brendan took that job and ran because Marco was hurt and suspended, and then just never picked it up again. I think Paxton obviously has more of an obstacle, but I think knowing how he is, I think that'll make him work 10 times harder to push his way into the starting lineup.
Yeah, I agree. I will say I do think that Paxton should be getting some more minutes, and I stemmed this back from even last year because there were some spurts where I did see some nice stuff. That goal against New England last year, I mean, come on.
Oh my God, that was filthy.
Beautiful.
That Absolutely was filthy.
Mike, why you gotta do this to me, man? Prospects. We all know the Phillies farm system.
Mike, do not make me come to Delco and slap 50 Shades of Dupe out of you. All right, listen, don't test me. I will. All right. Ease off of it, mister.
And Mike, you also know the problem is with homegrown players, drafted players as well in the city is that the minute these guys don't seem like they're going to be the next Justin Jefferson or the next Tuukka Rask, whatever he may be, LeBron James, we want to run them out of town. And obviously that has a part to do with it as well.
But listen, Johnny,
we're not blessed with that.
Come on, the difference is the Union don't believe in the draft anymore. That's how it works. The Union don't believe in the draft.
What is
so we don't have to worry about that Justin Jefferson versus Jalen Reagor, the DK Metcalf versus JJ Target Whiteside. We don't have to worry about that.
I agree, Mike. We definitely need to see some more, and from all these young homegrowns as well. But Justin, you know what Saturday is? Obviously, this weekend is Memorial Day weekend, which I hope everyone's having a safe weekend. But you know what Saturday is? On Memorial Day weekend, dude.
Is it a Patriots game?
Birds Patriots rematch of the Super Bowl. No, dude, we got the Rams. Dude, I'm excited, man. On Memorial Day weekend, we get this great.
Listen, I'm gonna have to somehow get some kind of quad box or whatever I can get set up while I'm down the shore. Get the game on the TV.
Are you kidding me?
Listen. I me. No matter where I am, I will have that game on, and I will be running around the shore house. I will be staying at, just screaming "Dupe" at the top of my lungs. So I will be prepared.
I know if Paul see me at Seattle City with my Union fever down there, but well, as we mentioned, ladies and gentlemen, this upcoming weekend we have a big match against the New England Revolution. We always know what it is when it comes to the New England Revolution. So we were blessed enough to have Sam Minton give us the preview, give us his thoughts, the insight of the New England Revolution. He writes for the Bent Musket, the SB Nation version of the New England Revolution. So we're gonna bring you now that interview with Sam. We're hoping this time it runs a lot more smoothly than we did last time. So without further ado, we're going to give it over to Sam. Does he do better today on the Dupe by the River guest line? Please welcome from the Bent Musket, Sam Minton. What's going on, Sam? How are we feeling today?
Doing good, doing good. We're recording on a nice U.S. Open Cup Wednesday, so excited for that action for the Revs, but doing good and looking forward to this match on Saturday.
That's right, Sam. I really do appreciate it. It is match. All right. Well, looks like we got technical difficulties yet again. So we're going to try this one more time, ladies and gentlemen, and we do apologize for the inconvenience here. We will definitely work on this, and we won't have these issues again. It works. That's the funny part. It works before we get to put it on here, and then of course you start rolling, and of course it just stops working on us. Try one more time. that is fair. That is absolutely fair. All right, let's bring back in our man Justin. Justin, I listen.
Yeah, it looks like there you are, John.
There we are.
Boy, if we didn't have technical problems, we'd have no problems, right?
That is for sure, my man. No worries, guys. It'll be back up in 2 seconds. At least these are easy fixes. It could be a lot worse. Safari. You got an score update on that Revs game?
I'm not. I'm actually watching the Orlando Miami game, which shouts to friend of the pod, the lovely Morgan Tenza is at this game, and not
There you
shooting
go.
it. She's actually attending as a fan with a friend of mine and someone we've had on the pod, my good pal Freddie Alarcon. So I hope both of y'all are, and I reached out to them, I hope both of y'all are having fun at the game. And it has actually been a very entertaining game. Honestly, U.S. Open Cup games right now are all fairly close games. The game that is of interest to a number of people, Louisville City 1-1 with Nashville in the 56th minute.
No way.
As I said, nothing. Orlando into Miami. NYCFC in New England in the 40th minute, tied at 0-0. Minnesota up 1-0 on Cinderella team, Union Omaha.
Duperas. Today on the Doop by the River guest line, please welcome from the Bent Musket, Sam Minton. What's going on, Sam? How are we feeling today?
Doing good, doing good. We're recording on a nice U.S. Open Cup Wednesday, so excited for that action for the Revs, but doing good and looking forward to this match on Saturday.
That's right, Sam. I really do appreciate it. It is match day up there in the New England area as the New England Revolution facing off against NYCFC. I know here in Philly, we're a little conflicted who to root for in that one, but of course, best of luck to you guys here tonight, my man. But as always, Sam, as we always like to start off with these, obviously you are brand new to the show, so we appreciate you checking out taking the time. But who's Sam Minton? Kind of talk about what you do as far as covering the New England Revolution a little bit about yourself, man.
Yeah, so I've been lucky enough. I've been able to cover the Revolution for about 2.5 years now. Obviously, I was covering it during COVID, so it was great, last season finally being able to be up in the press box covering the matches. But yeah, I've been covering the team ever since about 2.5 years now. Love going to Gillette Stadium, and it's definitely an interesting time to be a New England Revolution fan. For all the Philly fans out there, I want to give a shout out to everyone at the Bent Musket who started the Announce John Bell movement. That's probably what we're most known for over at the Bent Musket. But yeah, it's been great so far. And, especially the playoff run ended shortly last year. But things are always interesting in New England with the New England Revolution.
Sam, so obviously Philly sports and Boston sports, completely different trajectories. Boston sports, you guys have a lot to do over the last decade. Philly sports, not so much. We do a Super Bowl and a World Series, so we'll definitely take that. But one of my worst days as a Philly sports fan, believe it or not, Sam, was that infamous night in Chester, Pennsylvania on October 2020. And I'm sure you know where I'm going with this. Where were you during that playoff game where you guys came into the soup? You didn't win the last 6 and you got the upset. Where were you for that, Sam?
I mean, I'm pretty sure I was just, in my in my house, covering the game from afar. But I think when it comes to Philadelphia, New England moments, I know there's always, is it a rivalry? Is it not a rivalry? But my favorite moment, I'll always remember it, Henry Hessler just absolutely launching that ball into the stands. It was an amazing moment. Obviously, Philly fans were not happy. I can realize why. If I was a Philly fan, I'd be pretty pissed too. But as a Revolution fan, it was great seeing him. It would have been better if there were ball boys and ball girls. Just imagining that interaction would have been amazing. But we had a writer who also has a podcast, Greg Johnstone of Revolution Recap. He was there and got to witness that, and he said it was absolutely insane. But it was crazy, really seeing the Revolution struggle against Philadelphia, and then all of a sudden, just towards the end of the season, having Carlos Hill back, they were able to pull it together, and they made a little run there, and obviously came up short against Columbus. But it's kind of the start of this decent run that the Revolution went on. Obviously, last year winning the Supporters Shield. Now they're having their struggles, but they're making some moves, and hopefully they'll be able to compete in the Eastern Conference once playoffs come around.
Absolutely, man. It's interesting because this is in when you compare the MLS to worldwide as far as the leagues go, this is an infant as far as the other ones are compared to. And so there's a lot of rivals that are just being built overnight, essentially, because of how new this is. And so what I want to ask of you as a Revs fan, and you guys have been here since day one, where does this rivalry that's kind of brewing up with the Union kind of rank amongst the derbies or rivals you guys have up there?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for me, it's probably the closest thing we have to a rivalry so far. There's obviously matches against New York Red Bulls, DC United, but they're not really at that level. Obviously, I think there's been some tenacity in those Philadelphia games, whether it be, Matt Turner kind of, getting a little elbow from Casper, the not so friendly ghost who's now on the Chicago Fire. And also, too, we kind of some illusions that maybe a certain Polish player who also shares the same name may have thrown a social media person's phone and broke it. So there was that, too, as well. So if anything, I would say Philadelphia, that I-90, that Liberty rivalry, whatever you want to call it, it seems to be the closest thing we have to one right now. So hopefully on Saturday, see the Tempers players, see it an intense game, and hopefully, at least for the Revolution, they'll be able to come out on top.
It's only good for the league, my man. I completely agree. Obviously, when you look at sports, you obviously Sixers and Celtics. I mean, for a lot of Sixers fans, those 80s. Oh, man. And of course, people forget about the Flyers and the Bruins. I mean, some great matchups in playoff history that you look at both of those. Obviously, it's tough for the Phillies and the Red Sox in different leagues. And, obviously, 2 Super Bowls that we've seen between the Eagles and Patriots, but you get these guys twice a year, every year, and it's ever since Bruce has been there, this is when it's really started up, and it's been a lot of fun, and it's definitely added to that rivalry. And like I mentioned, a brand new league, it's really been adding some great spice that we like to see here, my man.
Oh yeah, for sure. And credit to Bruce Arena. He's really changed things here in New England, brought in a whole new kind of mentality, and he deserves all the credit in the world, obviously, for that supporter shield and where the team is right now. So it's definitely been fun to get the Bruce Arena experience.
Absolutely, he's definitely been one of the best for sure all time, man. All right, so you guys have had a new look at part of this rebrand phase that we've been in the MLS, and I think you guys were the last to have one of the original crests from day one.
Yep.
So what is your thoughts? How's the fan base feel now after seeing it in season? What's the thoughts of the new crest?
Yeah, I think overall it's kind of gotten to the point where people are moving on. I know definitely when the leaks were coming out, when rumors were coming out, it was something where people were kind of hesitant. I would say 50-50 would probably be the word, where people love the crayon flag. We have our writer Jake Catanese. Long live the crayon flag. He'll have that hashtag. If you look on his Twitter page, a ton of long with the crayon flag hashtags. So it's definitely tough to see it go. Obviously, you love that originality and just, being one of those original MLS clubs. But to the credit, the new one, I definitely think it looks pretty good on merch, looks pretty good on the jersey. Obviously, it kind of still has some of that European flair, the circle crest and some of the typography and whatever it may be. But, it was probably time for an update. It was a great time with the Revolution entering this new phase, being able to reach the success that they were able to, kind of ushering in a new crest. It was probably the perfect timing. But it's had its up and downs. There were some times where merch wasn't in there. There was times when all of a sudden we thought the crayon flag was going to be erased. But if you look at Gillette Stadium now, we have banners, whether it is for Open Cup wins or the Supporter Shield last year. Those feature the crayon flag. But you would say it's probably it's time for a change. You wish there could have been some more originality to it. But overall, it's a pretty decent crest. So credit to the design team for doing that.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. Like I mentioned, when you have such a young league and your teams are still trying to find those identities, but there will always be a special place in my heart for those original crest, man. Even the Metro Stars. We had MLS Gone Wild a couple weeks ago for the crew preview, and that OG crew with the construction men in the crest there. That's definitely something that you'll never forget. But hey, it's part of the evolution that we got going on. And with that being said, I kind of wanted to talk about something that we always talk about here in Philly, and that is obviously stadium location. It's funny as it is, Sam. Earlier in the winter, I took a trip up to Maine. I took a road trip with my girlfriend up to the New England area. By the way, beautiful area. I took a stop in Gillette Stadium, to film some fun TikToks of the ordinary. But I like what you guys got to set up there. I like that little strip mall that you guys have there. I think that's really great. You got some bars and restaurants, some pregame stuff. Definitely makes it exciting. And it's obviously, look, we see it every Sunday for the Patriots. It looks great, but it just doesn't feel like a soccer stadium. And when I watch it on TV, and sometimes when I see the attendance down as well, and I just hate to see such a great sports market like Boston to just have that situation. Now, what is the stadium situation? I did hear there's some renovations being done. Could that possibly be the lure of the World Cup as one of the host cities? And of course, the question that we always ask as MLS fans: do we move into a downtown situation? So, what is the situation right now at the stadium?
Yeah, definitely. Talking on the renovations, obviously they're mostly for the Patriots, especially with Robert Kraft, building that stadium. But also too, definitely in an effort to probably try and get that World Cup bid. They're making renovations. You have turf. They'd probably put in grass if they were to get that World Cup bid. It's an interesting situation. I remember at Carlos Hill's MVP press conference, we were able to talk to Taylor Twellman, and he said they were closing in on a place. And, we're still at this point where we don't really have any idea of if there'll be a place, when there'll be a place. It's continuing to be up in the air. Revolution fans have heard so many times that we're close. They got a place. They have a selection, and it just seems like it never comes to fruition. A lot of it for fans is once a little shovel in the ground, then I'll actually believe that there's actual work, being done to get a stadium. It's an interesting quandary because the Revs, they have been able to, especially in this recent run, last year going up into the playoffs, and even this year they've been able to get crowds 30 plus. So are you going to be able to build a soccer-specific stadium with a crowd like 30 plus in downtown Boston? You got to weigh the pros and cons there. And obviously for the Crafts, if you're able to get 2-1, save as much money, and bring in decent crowds, it's a really difficult situation. I think a lot of people would love a soccer-specific stadium, especially in Boston, being able to have transit, being able to have an easily accessible area to convene, kind of possibly capitalize on a younger crowd, capitalize on the city crowd and get more people in the games, get more people involved in soccer, and kind of build that atmosphere. Because like you mentioned, it's kind of, I don't want to say hollow, but it's obviously a big stadium. You can fill 60,000 plus people there. So when you only have 30,000 people, it still can kind of feel empty. The crowd can be rocking, but it's just not the same as if you go to Nashville or a different soccer specific stadium. So it's really interesting. It's gone to the point where people are now just kind of resigned to the fact that it's going to be at Gillette. We have a multi-million-dollar training facility over by there. And why would you do that? And then all of a sudden move to Boston. So it's almost to the point where it's just apathy, where no one really essentially cares. It'd be great if they get a soccer-specific stadium, but no one's really holding their breath that it'll actually happen.
Absolutely, man. It's obviously something we'll always be talking about, especially here in Philly. Obviously, we don't play in Philadelphia, and there's always going to be that discussion. You guys are the Chester Union, and you won't ever be Philly until you move to Philly, and all these different types of things. But I mean, I don't know about you as far as the soccer experience at Gillette Stadium, but when you go down to Subaru Park, I love it. I don't miss the traffic down at the sports complex in Philly. I love the views, and no one bothers you down there. So I really do enjoy it. But we'll always have that, Sam. We'll always have that discussion whether to be downtown or not. But Sam, let's get to the action on the pitch, shall we? So I kind of want to look at your all season, and obviously a couple moves being made. Obviously, the big loss of Tajon Buchanan. What a stud that you guys have been able to develop there. Teal Bunbury, nice little vet, is down in Nashville now, as well as Scott Caldwell. And, of course, Matt Turner will be gone in the summer. And, of course, you add on Sebastian Leggett, a pair. Obviously, all three of these additions I'm going to mention, very familiar with Bruce Arena, Omar Gonzalez, and Josie Altidore as well. So my question is, what was the objective in the offseason?
It's quite interesting, especially of how it goes now. Revolution fans will be well aware that Omar Gonzalez has had his struggles. He's looked very much not the youngest player out there. He's had his struggles on the back line. But to be fair, the entire back line's really struggled. And then also too, Sebastian Leggett, he's kind of picking it up. He got a great start. He was basically almost the idea to try and replace Tajon Buchanan, out there on the wing. But I wouldn't say he's that type of player. But, he's been able to get some goals. He's been able to make some great assists. And I think he's really picking up his play now. And also, too, another name that you didn't mention, Josie Altidore, obviously, comes with a big price tag, but Toronto's paying a lot of that. And for what we hear from Bruce Arena, he won't be ready until June, maybe July. He's dealing with soreness, leg issues. And, he's been able to come off the bench, been able to start some games, but hasn't played a full 90 to my knowledge. So it's been quite an interesting offseason. They will appear to have possibly found their Tajon Buchanan replacement in Dylan Barrero. They just acquired him from Atletico Mineiro in Brazil. He's more of a winger type. He was able to succeed in the state tournament down there. And, he's a younger guy. They were able to utilize the U22 initiative, the first player I believe they were able to use with the initiative. And obviously, in terms of Matt Turner, they have George Petrovic, who they acquired from Serbia, young goalkeeper, came very, very heralded, has already had some time in the Serbian national team, has gotten some starts in the U.S. Open Cup. Wouldn't surprise me if he gets to start tonight going up against NYCFC. But especially when you talk about those names, Omar Gonzalez, Josie Altidore, and Sebastian Leggett, really seemed like Bruce was trying to get the gang back together, maybe make one more run for a MLS Cup final. That trophy has been eluding New England for so long, and it's what everybody wants. It's great winning the Supporters Shield. But that MLS Cup, that's the real, we finally made it. We're planting our flag here. So it seemed like Bruce was looking to utilize that veteran presence, I would say, so far. The majority would be a failure. Sebastian Leggett probably being the best player. Josie has had his moments. He was able to notch a goal, I believe, against Pumas in the CONCACAF Champions League. But Omar Gonzalez, at least so far, I would say, has been a bust. So those veteran offseason moves have been hit or miss. And, Bruce has largely been successful in bringing in MLS veterans, whether it be Ima Boateng. Obviously, Matt Polster was over in Scotland, but, his time with the Chicago Fire, he's been great. Tommy McNamara. So he's done quite well. It's just been those international transfers where he really struggled with guys like Alexander Butner, Christian Mafla, not really finding success in the league, as well as Wilfred Captoon, but he might be on the way back up. But it's definitely been interesting seeing Bruce, the GM, I would almost say hamper Bruce, the coach at times. And that's the uniqueness of having Bruce as the head coach and the sporting director.
Could definitely be very, very tough. I'll be honest with you, and I'm sure you're going to understand this. When I looked at this offseason by New England, you guys are obviously close. I mean, Supporter Shield last year, you were in the Eastern Conference Finals 2 years ago. So you guys feel like you're right there at MLS Cup, kind of like how we feel here in Philly. So I felt like you guys took the Islanders approach where you decided to go and get a couple of veteran players for the experience. They've been there. They've done that. And I understand the logic of that. But sometimes when you go for too much veteran leadership or veteran players, you forget that there's a lot of miles on some of those players. Now, I'm not saying that the Rev season is going to go in the way the Islanders season, as you know, did not go so well. But I do think that sometimes we sacrifice possibly youth for veteran knowledge and veteran leadership. So it's just kind of my take, and that's how I see the New England Revolution. But we'll see. There's still, again, a lot of and there's still a lot of talent on this team, as we're going to get to as well in just a second, man.
Yeah, and then also too, just kind of touching upon that veteran, I think part of it too has to do with injuries. The Revs, they had to deal with a lot of
Stuff, man.
injuries. Yeah, Henry Kessler and Andrew Farrell in that back line. And obviously, acquiring a guy like Omar, I don't think he was initially expected to start a bunch of games to start off the regular season. So he was kind of thrust into it. A young player, John Bell, was thrust into the starting lineup. And the same thing goes for Josie Altidore. You had Gustavo Bo and Adam Busa out at the same time at one point. So there's definitely been some tough instances of injuries, suspensions, whatever it may be. But it's kind of getting to the point now where the Revolution are healthy enough where those excuses can't happen. And even though, we'll probably get into it, the back line has continued to struggle. You can't really blame injuries anymore. So they're in an interesting situation when it comes to those new signings and those veteran signings.
Absolutely, man. So I think you guys have tasted a little bit of what we felt last year in Philly with CCL and trying to juggle both MLS and CCL. Since you guys have been eliminated against Pumas, how have you guys been able to adjust to the MLS and how you guys been playing?
Yeah, I definitely think it's taken some time. Obviously, if you look at how the games that the Revolution have played, they had a history, or you could even say still the history of just giving last-minute goals to either lose a point or lose all 3 points. Obviously, you had RSL storm back in the snow up here in New England. You had Pumas come back from a 3-0 aggregate, and I really think it took a toll on the team. Those devastating losses can really affect the team and affect the mindset. But they're starting to get on the right track. You're starting to get more consistent play from your back line. I think Andrew Farrell has been pretty good so far this season. Henry Kessler is the best defender. Matt Polster is the unsung hero of the team with his ability to be a great defensive midfielder, making the tackles, making the plays when they need to be. They've had some up and down play from Brandon Bai, but last week in the MLS, he was able to get 3 assists. His ability to cross into the box has been great. And DeJuan Jones is obviously one of the most up-and-coming talent at that position over in left back right now, probably in the entire MLS. It's just man marking that's really been the problem. Center backs, whether it be a guy like Omar, Andrew Farrell's had his struggles, Baez had his struggles, really the entire back line. So that's really the key. But I think they've gotten into MLS play quite well. Reestablishing. Obviously, you want to do well in CCL, and congrats to Seattle. They definitely proved how great of a team they are and the structure of the team. But the Revolution, they want to win an MLS Cup. And, you want to do well in the league. So, I think they've prioritized that. Obviously, I think they want to do well in U.S. Open Cup. I think the lineup they brought out last week definitely showed that. And waiting on lineups now, we'll see, how full strength of a lineup they give. But I think they've done a pretty good job of, reconstructing their goals and really focusing on doing well in MLS.
With that being said, look, for the Philadelphia Union, they're obviously coming off of a really big win on the road against Portland, and that was a much needed win because they were winless in 6 before that. So, and also the system of the Philadelphia Union, obviously Bruce has mentioned to it as well, is nothing complicated. We all know how they're going to play. So how do you think this upcoming Saturday Bruce is going to handle the Union high press and just the way the style of play that they play with?
Yeah, I'll definitely give credit to Bruce, being down there in trainings and just, watching the team. That's something they've been working on, dealing with press and also, pressing opponents as well, too. So I think they'll be well equipped to handle it. Petrovic, he's if he gets to start, he's pretty good with his feet. Same thing with Turner. So I believe they'd be able to break the press. I think the key will be using those dynamic players that they have in order to break that press, whether it be a guy like DeJuan Jones, whether it possibly be a guy like Dylan Barrero. You also obviously have Gustavo Bo returning to health. He got, I believe, like 40, 45 minutes last game, along with Barrero. So it wouldn't surprise me if they get a full 90-minute run out soon. And also, too, if you're just able to get into that final third and loft the ball into the box, Adam Boots is probably the deadliest guy in MLS when it comes to balls in the air and being able to get those into the back of the net. So I think it will be an interesting game. I think that high press could test the Revolution backline, the sense of operating on the counter, or if a turnover is made and Philly's able to switch on and get onto the attack, testing guys like Andrew Farrell, Henry Kessler, Matt Polster, and the rest of the back line. But they're in a situation, especially with how this team can perform, at home, you want to get 3 points, especially of how the team has struggled so far this season. They need to, obviously, the East is close, but you need to get as many points as home as you can get. So I think Revolution fans are definitely expecting a win out of this Saturday's matchup.
All right. I like that. I like to hear that. All right, so I want you to give us a lineup prediction, but I'm going to help you out here, Sam, because I have the
Ooh.
current lineups for tonight's match against
Oh, I
NYC.
appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I know it's a
So
little
I'll just give a shout out. So let's see. It looks like they're going with a pretty rotated lineup. Basically, our entire back line, including our goalkeeper, is rotated. It looks like in our midfield, Maciel, he's a hit or miss starter. Matt Polster, I would say he's definitely a starter.
with the captain's band too, man.
Yeah, Cap, he deserves it too. Boateng's been a guy coming off the bench. Rennick's been a guy coming off the bench. Damien Rivera, hit or miss starter. Esmir, I'm gonna mispronounce his name, Baraktovic, just signed a homegrown deal, 17 years old.
Nice.
So yeah, very heavily rotated lineup. So from what I take about this, Philly's gonna get a full force Revolution lineup coming on Saturday.
So does that mean Buska, Heel, and Bo?
I would definitely say Heel plays. I would definitely say Buxa plays. Back line, you should get guys like Henry Kessler, Andrew Farrell, DeJuan Jones, Brandon By in the back line. I would say Turner probably starts. Polster could be a guy up in the air who maybe, if they get a lead early or, God forbid, the Revs go down a few goals early, they take him out, rest him, get him back in. But the Revs do have a guy like Tommy McNamara. They have Wilfred Kaptoum, Arnerson, those guys who could slot into the midfield. And then, obviously, like we mentioned, Sebastian Lletget, Dylan Barrero, those are guys who could get the start as well. I would say Bo is the only one who's a question because he's coming back from injury. But besides that, I would say definitely full back line, most likely full midfield, and you'll definitely get Buxa at the minimum up top.
All right. So the final question is a two-parter. So obviously, Sam, this is a Union podcast. So what I want you to give us is a key for the Philadelphia Union to beat the Revolution. What do the Union need to do to beat the Revs, and give us a final score prediction?
Yeah, so I definitely think that it's shutting down those dynamic players, whether it be on the wing backs being able to provide service in the box. So a guy like DeJuan Jones, a guy like Brandon By, because if he's able to get service into the box, he's shown. He got a hat trick of assists last week. So definitely think closing in on those wing backs. And then also, too, it's proven to be effective. It's probably not the cleanest style of play, but if you're able to be physical with Adam Buxa and Carlos Heel, they can definitely have their struggles. So I think, closing in on those DPs, closing in on those wing backs, that's really an area where you need to focus on, especially with Buxa and Heel kind of scoring the majority of the goals so far for the team. And I definitely think it's going to be an interesting matchup. I guess I'll be a little bit of a homer and say probably a high score. Will I say a high scoring fair? Not really. 2-1. I'll go with the Revs pulling out the victory.
The Union do not even know how to beat a high-scoring game, so no.
Yeah, it's with the back line. It can be up in the air. If we get Henry Kessler and Andrew Farrell, probably one goal. If we get Andrew Farrell and Omar Gonzalez, could be a little bit more of a high-scoring affair. So it all depends on that.
All right, man. All right. Well, Sam, listen, we do appreciate your time and giving us the insight for the New England Revolution. Where can people find your work as far as covering the Revolution?
Yeah, so you can definitely find me on Twitter at Sam_Minton22, and also just make sure to check out the Bent Musket at the Bent Musket, and check out all our stuff. Have coverage from Gillette Stadium whenever the Revs are at home, and we have a bunch of great writers on the staff. Shout out Seth, shout out Josh, and the whole gang. And Greg, who recommended how great you are on the show. So I appreciate, being able to be on here. And yes, just make sure to check us out there, and looking forward to Saturday.
Absolutely. Big shout out to Greg for sure. Big shout out to Sam too. We will also put those in the description so you guys can go check out the work of Sam for whoever wants to be in tap with what's going on for the New England Revolution. But I want to give a big thank you to Sam. Thanks, man. All right. Justin, your thoughts, takeaways from our interview with Sam?
I think a lot of good points. The one thing I will say is I think he undersold just how bad Omar Gonzalez has been. I mean, the man who I firmly hold high on the list of reasons we did not qualify for World Cup 2018. Omar Gonzalez is I'd say definitely there with Michael Bradley and Bruce Arena. Ironically, all in that list. I think their defense has been kind of suspect at times, as he said, between injuries and rotation. It hasn't really looked completely solid. The midfield, I mean, when Carlos Hill is on, he's on, but I think it's absolutely clear that the offense goes through Carlos Hill, and if he can get service to Adam Buxa, then it's going to be an issue. But I think in terms of the crosses, the Union have shown this year that they've been really good at handling crosses. They've forced a lot of teams into just launching balls into the box, and between Jack Elliott and Jakub Glesnes, you have two guys who've been able to handle those with ease. I mean, if all you're doing is just crossing the balls in the box, I think the defense will take that any day. And I just think that it's going to be an interesting matchup for the Union because we don't give up a lot of goals, but at the same time, we haven't been scoring a ton. But the way this Montreal New England defense has been, I'm curious if this is a game that could potentially be exploited. It'll definitely be a close one, but every so often there's a Union Revolution game that kind of gets blown out of the water at a certain point.
Absolutely. I definitely think that emotions will be high for this match when you're talking about both of these sides, and I think that'll be prevalent. So anytime you have just emotions flying high, anything could definitely happen. I think for me, the concern is the forwards. I don't know what Mikel. Obviously, we have Jim's presser probably tomorrow, so we'll find out what the update is on Ua. But the last we heard, I mean, he didn't travel to Portland, and he's been nursing this quad still, and it's definitely been a concern. But you obviously don't have Carranza, so Justin, like, is Sekio and Corey, or if you run a Christmas tree, like, is that good enough to be a pretty strong New England side who's starting to find form?
I think so. I think in terms of Ua, I said this with NYCFC before the international break. I really hope they don't rush him, especially on that turf. Like, the reason he's in the situation in the first place is because you played him on arguably the worst surface in the entire league at the Stadio Olympic in Montreal. Literally one of the worst surfaces in the league. Has been for years, and players that MLS players have said that for years that it's almost unplayable. I really don't think they should play him. If they do, I could see Sergio starting.
He also picked up a knock as well in last game.
That's the thing. I think with that, you might see him on the bench, and you might see the Christmas. I think you might have. Remember, the Christmas tree kind of came out of necessity for rotation. And I think the Christmas tree would also allow one of Quinn or even Paxton to get some time. So I'm not as concerned because if Daniel Gazag's given the space, especially with some of the young players, I could easily see Gazag really pushing that back line and testing as to the strength, because as Sam said, the back line's kind of been up in the air. So I think if anyone's going to take advantage of that, it's going to be a very informed Daniel Gazdag.
It's so funny because I feel like last time, like I think the two times we played him last year was before World Cup or before international break and during international break last season, if I'm not mistaken. And obviously this season.
Yeah, it was also around CCL. Like at that point, you were resting a lot of players between international breaks and the CCL. I think last season was a bit of a outlier. And obviously the season before you had, 6 times. But typically the Union have actually played fairly decently in New England. So I like, and especially given that this is the last game before a 2-week break, I think you could see Jim, roll the dice and try to be a little more creative with the lineup selection.
Definitely. I definitely think it's definitely going to call for that because obviously it's going to be a tough one. But, so do you vision a Christmas tree coming on Saturday night?
I think so. I think it obviously we'll see Jim's presser how Sergio is doing. I think realistically you're going to want to, if he's healthy enough to be on the bench, I think that, and that involves the Christmas tree. Obviously, the lineup's going to pretty much stay the same. With the Christmas tree, I would say I'd have Paxton next to Gosdog, just because I think Paxton played really well in his around 40 minutes of play on Sunday. So I think Jim will reward that with some time. But other than that, I think it's a similar lineup. But I think that's still a pretty strong lineup. I think the Union have been a pretty solid road team, so I definitely see, at the very least, walking away with a point. I mean, you know how New England games can be.
This is very, very true. I want you to give us a key for tomorrow's or Saturday's match, and also the prediction.
The key, and I say this with almost every team because we played with against some really solid attacking mids, but stopping Carlos Heel. When the Union have been at their best against the Revolution is when Carlos Heel is a non-factor in the game, because despite Adam Buxa having 7 goals this season, and he's been scoring more with his feet than he has with his head in this season, he also gets great service and great through balls from Heel. And when Carlos Heel gets pissed off, he gets thrown off his game. And when he gets thrown off his game, that Revolution midfield kind of throws into disarray, because without Tajon Buchanan and without who left for Belgium, and without a healthy Gustavo Bo, I really think the attacking options kind of fall off at a certain point. And if the Union can shut him down, which again is always easier said than done, but the Union so far this season have done a pretty good job of shutting down teams' best players and really forcing them to get a lot more creative. So I think that's the obvious key. And for a prediction, I think I see the Union. I think I can walk away with a 2-1 victory. I always try to be on the conservative side for road games, for road predictions. But I think on the heels of a complete performance against Portland, I don't see, even without Carranza, I don't see why the Union would let up. And knowing Jim, knowing how this team operates, Jim is just good, to put the onus on his team to keep up and keep the momentum going into the 2-week break. So I say 2-1 Union.
2-1 Union, absolutely, man. I'm sorry for again. We got the technical difficulties. My camera is not working now. So shouts to Jalen Hurts. Mike Thomas letting us know Key Gazdak scores because it ain't gonna be a striker.
Yeah, and I think even if you have Quinn or Paxton, I think I could easily see them throwing in some solid chances. I mean, listen, the last time
Yes, sir.
Paxton was in Gillette, he scored an absolute banger of a goal. So who knows? Maybe lightning strikes twice.
Hopefully, man. We can only hope for that. Absolutely. Well, guys, you guys enjoy the match this upcoming weekend. Obviously, Memorial Day weekend, so it's a great time to have a great MLS matchup between the Union and the Revolution. So definitely check that out. Obviously, Justin will be somewhere in Wildwood, annoying the Wildwoodians with his Union fandom, and I will be in Brigantine, as per usual. They know the most annoying Union fan is coming to town as per usual.
Oh yeah, come on! I will be playing Maria I Like It Loud on repeat. So
why does he keep playing the song?
What is this song, and what is a dupe?
There's definitely something wrong with us, but it's okay because there's a whole bunch of us that are like this.
I was gonna say, come on, John. Between me being a Union fan, me being a goalie, there's obviously something wrong with me. So at this point, let's just throw it out the water and just say, it's Justin.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's episode of DOOP. I want to give a big shout out to everyone checking it on out. And thank you for hanging with us through all the technical difficulties here tonight. But we got through the episode. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you guys hit that like button. We will always broadcast these lives here on El Parcero Philly's YouTube channel. And of course, you can find the podcast wherever you stream podcasts. Find us on Apple, Google, and Spotify. You can find us under DOOP by the River. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Justin Hungarian, bicycle enthusiast, Friedberg. Of course, I am El Parcero Philly.